Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Fabulous. So, today, I'm here to talk to you about psychology and neuroscience into digital and technology. So, has anyone thought about how you introduce yourself? It's an interesting question. Maybe one-on-one, you might pitch yourself differently to a whole group of people. I'm here today, introduce myself to you guys. What do you say? So, hi, great, good start. So, typically you can take two different routes. First up, I can introduce myself, how I want you guys to see me, or how I want to be perceived. Or I could talk in terms of what you guys might want to learn about me today. So I might say something like, hey, I'm Bea, I'm 27. I work for Lab, which is a digital agency, and I'm head of consumer neuroscience. I've always wanted to be an actor too. Or I could say something like, hi, what do you guys want to hear about me today? Why should you be really engaged with my talk today, and why should you listen to me really intently throughout my presentation? So hopefully, the way I'm going to try and do that to you today is talk a little bit about how I got to where I got at the moment in my career, to tell you a little bit of history around my story. And then I'm going to tell you exactly what we do in the Consumer Neuroscience department at Lab. So I'll take you through a few processes. Hopefully by the end of the day, you'll have learned a little bit of psychology, a little bit of neuroscience. So yeah, that's the aim. So zooming out, when I was in your shoes, A-levels, about to go to university, I didn't want to go to university. I did not know what I wanted to do. And I'm not sure how many people said that during their talk today. Yeah, but I'm sure there's quite a few people who are really not sure about where they think they're going in their careers. But I did know that I had a few real interests. So I love films, and I loved understanding people. So my dad was a psychiatrist, so I was brought up in a very medical family. I was always talking about mental health issues. I loved learning about drugs and how they worked. I used to read the DSM-5, which is this big book of mental disorders and what they mean and how to treat them. So I was really, really interested in people. I was interested in psychology. And I don't know whether any of you have seen anything recently on maybe Netflix or a TV show or a film that's made you wonder, how do people actually work? How do brains work? How do minds work? It definitely prompts me when I watch things like The Joker. So how do people get to the point in their lives where they make these crazy decisions or do really extreme things? So that's really what I'm fascinated by. But I was dyslexic growing up, so I always found it really difficult to read. I was never great with school, but I studied really hard. And I got the grades I needed, but I wasn't really sure where I was going. I always wanted to be an artist or an actor. I also was really interested in magic, too. So I went to study neuroscience at King's, as Becky just said. So I wanted to understand, how does the brain work, and why does that matter, and how can we manipulate it? Right after university, which was an amazing experience, I then went to work in a digital agency. So for me, I just followed what I was interested in. Right? I knew there was this growing space of technology and digital, and I wanted to learn how does that work and how can I get my teeth into it. But I just kind of floated into digital marketing. And there was this whole world that I didn't know about, and I worked for an agency at the time. And my client was Google, so I used to run Google campaigns for big partnerships and run Facebook ads. You know those annoying ads that pop up in front of your screen when you're busy scrolling? Sometimes they're useful, though. Sometimes I quite like them. So I used to buy that activity and run that activity. Before going to university, I didn't want to go to university, and I worked for a branding agency. So that year was really interesting because what I learned was understanding that businesses have a very small space in which to sell their product. So if you go to a supermarket, you've literally got, sometimes only got a little bit of a space to sell your product and pop out of a shelf. So I was really interested in how that worked too. So my interest in neuroscience and people, and then my interest in design, digital and technology. I don't know what this GIF is. I just think it's really funny. It sounds pretty mind-blowing, right? How do you merge that consumer neuroscience, that digital and understanding of human behavior and digital? So that's what I do now, consumer neuroscience. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll understand what that means. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of our processes. Before I do that, I'd like to ask you to read the words on the screen there, just to yourself, please. Cool. Thank you. So just a quick, brief summary of what we do at Lab. I'm sure a lot of you have heard what we do already today from some of the talks. But we're a digital agency, so we build websites, we build apps, we understand human experience online through a digital journey online. So what my team does is it bakes in an understanding of psychology and how the user interacts with websites and on their mobile device. And in doing that, we improve the user journey and we improve the website experience. I'm not sure about you, but some of the websites out there are pretty tough to use, especially things like checkouts and things. They can be really annoying. So what we try and do is we improve those experiences. So this is a little bit of what we do. This is the stuff that we talk about on a day-to-day basis. So it's behavioral psychology, nudge theory, consumer neuroscience, and behavioral economics. Now, I don't have a lot of time today. I've only got 20 minutes. So I'll just briefly talk to you a little bit about psychology first up. Now, in order to do that, I'd like to ask you all a question. So if you'd like to think about, I'd like to invite you, what is important to you guys in your career? So when I ask this question, I'm looking for one-word answers. Things like, for me, it would be money, things like excitement and success. So if you want to get into pairs, I'll give you 1 minute, and 1 minute only, please, to discuss this. Everyone. I always find it really, really tricky to get people to stop talking when they've started a conversation, because you don't want to finish your conversation, I know. But if hopefully people will start to listen if I keep talking. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Any one-word answers? Shout them out. Stability, nice. Selflessness, you're kind. Luck. Oh, you're looking for luck, aren't we all? Anyone else? Location. Very, very rational. Brilliant. So this is a really interesting question to ask people, because you get different answers from different people, but often you'll find there's a trend. There's a trend that's based on psychology model, various psychology models that I don't have time to go into today, but the idea is that we interpret the world, or we experience the world in 3 different lenses. This is based on evolutionary psychology. So first up, we feel things. So we have that gut reaction, that feeling, the butterflies, the love feeling, the heartbeat. That's your emotional cortex. So that's your emotional world, your interpretation of the world inside you. Then you've got your interpretation of the world around you. That's your contextual world. And then you've got your thinky world. So what do you think about things? What do you tell yourself? What's your internal narrative saying to you? Why do you tell yourself why you did things, but you actually did it from your heart? That's the story we tell ourselves. So we call this psychology model monkey, lion, dog at lab, and we use it across everything that we do. So just to demonstrate to you, the monkeys in the room would care about showing off to people, caring about your place in the world, making a difference, selflessness, for example. The dogs in the world, the emotional people in the world, would be thinking about connections, making long-lasting relationships and teamwork. The lions in the room would be thinking more the rational, location, very lion, so very rational and factual. So we use this model, and the importance of this is we look at the customer rather than the business, and what does the customer want? And then we overlay our psychology model and understand what are their psychological motivations. And then based on that, we design digital strategies, we design content, we design campaigns, for example. So for example, here, Monkey Girl would be interested in FOMO. She doesn't want to miss out on stuff. And then digital translation might be using popular hashtags on Instagram. The key here is that businesses sell what businesses want to sell is different to what the customer wants to buy. Businesses sell services and experiences. Customers buy imagination and emotion. So that's the difference there. So a good example of this is Patagonia. Great brand, all about the environment. They did this campaign around Christmas time, and the idea was they really understood their customer. They knew that their customer is really caring about the environment. And thus, their campaign was all around make sure that you're very aware of the ecological impact of your purchases this Christmas. So it really speaks nicely to brand values. It also speaks nicely, more importantly, to what the customer wants and what they really care about. So very briefly, looking at the consumer neuroscience side of what we do here, biometric testing, you might have heard about it, you might have even used it, I don't know. But this is what we use when we're testing website journeys. So there are various metrics you can use and techniques you can use, and if anyone has any more questions, come and grab me afterwards, because I don't have a lot of time today. But what we use in our lab in Soho is we use three things. We use a galvanic skin response. That's that thing over there. It measures skin conductance. It's a lie detector test. So we use that, and we take metrics from that, and we overlay where people are looking. So we use eye tracking data. And at the same time, we then take facial coding data, so we understand what emotion they're feeling at any given point in time. So here's a quick example of someone using a website and getting really frustrated at one point. You can see he's really frowning, and it's come up in the facial coding data as a spike. So you can see it's an anger response and disgust response. So he's getting frustrated at a given point in time when he's looking at the map there. Not sure whether you can see it, but it's that yellow circle. And the idea here is, if we see an anger spike, we go to that part on the website and we go, right, let's change that. Why are they doing that? What's the unconscious reaction telling us that we can change? And we get cool data like this. So this is using multiple candidates' worth of data and overlaying their eye tracking data. So you can see that people like to look at people like to look at faces. The red part of that graph shows that people are looking at that lady's face. But they're also looking at where the lady is walking. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's bins, who knows. But they're looking in the direction in which she's traveling. So yes, we'd use that to our advantage in website design. So we might want to put a call to action where she's walking, for example. So that's how that works. Blackboard game. Can you shout out some words that you remember from the blackboard? Stick. Tea. Steak. Stick. I thought you said steak. Anyone else? Leaf. Tea. Brilliant. Wonderful. Okay, so you can see leaf, stick, tea. So interestingly, people tend to remember the words that are circled there. The reason being that the words that were circled were the ones with the missing letters. Seems pretty obvious. However, from a neuroscience perspective, the idea here is that if you make people think harder, so your brain has had to work harder to fill in the blanks of those particular words, then it means that you're increasing the cognitive load, which means that it's more difficult for you and it's going to increase memorability. So little techniques like that we can use throughout a website journey and go, right, we're going to introduce a little bit of cognitive load there and make them remember that bit a bit more if it's important in that journey. If anyone's interested in any of this, there's plenty of nudges out there. There's plenty of principles that are really, really interesting, and I recommend these books. So from my perspective, I didn't know where I was going in my career. When I started my career, my job didn't even exist. I found my job by accident, just following what I love and what I was curious about, and kind of it all works itself out. So that's inside out, from my perspective to your perspective. And from your perspective to my perspective, you don't need to know what you're going to do in your career necessarily. Your job might not even exist at the moment. The digital world is advancing so quickly, and there's so many opportunities out there, it might not even exist. And you could follow your job by following your instincts and what you're curious about. Thank you.